Welcome, everybody, to the Legends of Boxing show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Legends of Boxing show is brought to you by the Retired Boxers Foundation and MyBookie.ag. I'm your host for the Legends show, Mike Goodpaster, and today I want to interview what was one of my childhood favorites when I grew up watching boxing in the 70s, early 80s. Help me welcome to the show former WBA Lightweight Champion of the World, Sean O'Grady. How you doing, Sean?
Hey, doing great, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on the show. When I was a kid growing up, I used to listen to your show all the time, and now that I'm an adult, I'm finally on it. I knew one day our paths would cross. So I really appreciate you taking the time to put me on.
Yeah, and I usually start off by asking boxers when they got into boxing, but from everything I ever read about you, it was basically from the time you were born. Your parents were heavily involved. Your dad was a promoter. So basically coming out of the womb, you were a boxer, I take it.
Yeah. It was zygote. When I was zygote, I was out there throwing my punches. Yeah, you're right. My folks were in boxing. That's all they did. My father never had a job. I don't remember my father ever getting up in the morning, going to work, or never coming home at 5 and relax. I never knew that. His job was going to the gym every day, and getting his fighters out there boxing and trying to make them better as boxers. And that's all my parents did. My father, worked with many heavyweights. George Foreman. He worked with Ken Norton. He worked with Dwayne Bobbitt. He worked with all these great, mostly heavyweights. And he, when I started having a little bit of a career, this is going to sound absurd. My father started feeding me malts and, pasta and wanting me to put on weight and get bigger to be a heavyweight. Can you imagine me? I weigh, 140 pounds. I'm not going to be a heavyweight. My father loved heavyweights.
No, and you talked about your father, Pat. Growing up, I know that you had a great work ethic, still do. Do you attribute that to your father and your mother?
Absolutely, no doubt. My father, I knew this, but I didn't know the extent of it. My father is really a hero to our country. He served in the U.S. Marine Corps during World War II. He saw 44 months of combat. He was wounded twice. He was in a battle at Okinawa, at Guadalcanal, at Peleliu, at Iwo Jima, where they raised the flag. My father was a hero to our country. I'm so proud of him for his service. And I never understood until after he passed away. I got his military record, and I looked through it, and wow, he was a hero to our country. Whenever we would go somewhere, and one of the reasons he loved Ken Norton was because of Ken Norton's military background. But whenever we go somewhere and there was a military man there, my father would make me get up and go and say, thank you for your service, or even a policeman, thank you for your service. And and work ethic went right along with things like that. I always had to say yes, sir, and no, sir, to my father. And I'm glad my parents had that structure for me. I think kids all, they just want that structure. They want to have a place to go and a direction in their life. And I'm so thankful that both my parents, made certain that I got my education and that I've always had a direction. I'm at work now, so I mean that's what we do. So thanks, Mom and Dad.
And both
of my parents are deceased, by the way.
Yeah,
they're both buried in San Antonio. It's a military base in San Antonio.
Yeah, and so are mine. And the one thing that always drew me to you was the kind of relationship you had with your father. Kind of similar to what I had with mine. My dad also served in the military. The one thing I have noticed about people that served in the military, they usually don't want to talk about it. It's like I had Mike Weaver on a few weeks ago who served in Vietnam, and I asked him beforehand, I said, is there anything you don't want to talk about? He said, I don't want to talk about the Vietnam War.
Yes, understood. And my dad loved Mike Weaver too. And my father he never talked about it. Like I say, I got his military record after he died. There was a fella in Las Vegas that was in his company when he was in the military. And I'm telling you what, Mike, he would run from the guy. He he would shove me in front of him and the guy. And he didn't want to talk to the guy. He would not. The guy, the fella in Las Vegas that was in his company in World War II wanted to talk military stuff. I don't know, but my father, he ran from the guy saying, I don't want to talk. I don't want to talk to him. I don't want to meet him. I don't want to talk to him. And I was surprised at that. However, once I read these books and these books by E.B. Sledge about the military and our military then, and about how the battles of Guadalcanal and these fierce, unbelievable battles, which made me, reading this stuff, I started weeping just to think that anybody, my father or anybody, had to go through the enormity of the war. Just sends chills up and down my spine. And I am so thankful for my father and anybody who served in our military.
Yeah, and I actually read a book when I was like 9 or 10 years old called Guadalcanal Diary, and I was big on military history too, and I think that you know why they call them the greatest generation and the things they went through for us to have the freedom that we have today.
Changed the way they fight wars. Guadalcanal changed the way they fight wars. They went to Guadalcanal. I remember my dad telling me, he only talked about it one night by miraculous intervention. He told me they went to Guadalcanal and it was all these fierce battles. Then they went to Okinawa and nobody was there. They went on the beach. Everything is like the place was deserted. Well, I remember that because I went to see this movie, Hacksaw Ridge.
Yeah, great movie.
Clint Eastwood directed. Fabulous. That was depicted in the movie. Nobody would know that except somebody that was there. They showed that, and that's when I remembered my father one night telling me that story. Isn't that bizarre? Oh, yeah, he was a hero to our country. But him and my mother both. My mother too. Loved the sport. Both of them loved the sport of boxing. When I think about the sport of boxing today, and I think about my parents first and foremost, and how they would not allow it to dwindle like I think it has the last 17 years. They both loved the sport of boxing, and my father was really plugged into a lot of different areas in the sport. He started his own ranking committee. My father did.
Yeah, the WAA.
That's right. And he had all the rankings, had all the fighters in there, and had championship fights, and had people join, and he had it all organized. My father was a brilliant genius in many ways, and he sure loved the sport of boxing, and always fought for his boxers.
Yeah, and a lot of people, gave your dad a lot of grief saying he was too controlling of you, but from everything I ever read, you never saw it that way.
Well,
well, at least when you got older, you didn't see it that way.
Well, no, he was very, he was still very controlling. I don't say that he was not, but he was. He ruled everything. He ruled the whole business, my end of it and his end of it. And, he was quite adamant about making the decisions that he made, because it was his feeling that it was the right decision. And look, I wanted to be champion of the world. I want to tell you what, I was the world champion. So he helped me fulfill my dream, and so did my mother. I'll tell you something about my mother. I'm talking about my father, but my mother too. My mother used to run with me in the morning. Now she wouldn't run 8 miles, and it gets cold in my home. It gets today right now it's like 14 degrees in my home, and it'll get down to 0 degrees. And wind blows all the time.
I win. It's 10 degrees where I live right now, Sean.
Wow, you're in a heat wave. The wind blows a lot, so it's even colder here. But my mother would go out, and she wouldn't run the 8 miles with me, but she would run, a mile or 2 miles. But she would wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to take me out to run. My mother, and she made sure I did So my mother and father both were quite adamant about the sport of boxing. Plus, they promoted the sport. They promoted. Foreman was one of the biggest name, I guess, that my father my parents promoted, but they also promoted many others that you would never know, that people would never know. But there's so many. You're talking about some of these great fighters. Mike Weaver, my father was involved with him some during point of his career, and Kenny Norton, I guess, was one of the big guys that he was involved with. But so many other. Oscar Bonavina lived with us in our house, and my father, managed him and took him through the ranks, and there's so many others. Oh, I'm looking at a picture on my wall. This guy was the greatest. Oh my gosh, this guy was great. The picture on my wall is me at the Main Street Gym with Sugar Ray Robinson.
Ooh.
Robinson at that time was probably 58, maybe 60 years old. He's in a rubber suit, and I remember profoundly in the gym that day. I'm probably, in this picture, I'm probably 13 years old. In this picture, I remember he went over to the light bag and he slammed it, and man, everybody just stopped and in awe at the Main Street Gym. Then he got on the jump rope. Man, he could sing. He could sing with that jump rope. But anyway, my walls. I grew up in my house, in my home, and I grew up. I had pictures of boxers all over the walls.
Yeah, so did I, actually.
That was our family. Yeah, that was our family.
Yeah, and you talked about your mother, Jean, a little bit. She handled a lot of the details of your career also, from what I've read.
Yeah, she not only got up and ran with me, she helped to manage me and helped to publicize me. She would work with the local media to get to coordinate all of my appearances, and I mean, it was truly a family business, a family effort. But I'm not the only one. I mean, my family had other boxers too, because that was the business that we grew up in. We had a boxing ring in our backyard, so whenever we would have a fight in another city, my job was to tear down the boxing ring, put it on the trailer, drag it 200 miles to another city or wherever we went to, and unload, erect the boxing ring, and then we go back to the hotel and lie down for a couple of hours, and then come back and box, and then then load everything up at the last fight and go back to my home and go to school the next day. So it teaches you, I guess, persistence, maybe.
Yeah, and I also read that you did a lot of moving during your, high school years or younger years. Did you ever, since you're missing out on schooling, probably hard to have friends, did you ever feel like maybe you were being punished?
Yeah, I did. I did all the time. I had a lot of friends. I don't mean I did not have friends. I had a lot of friends. I'm so thankful now to all the friends that I had in boxing and out of boxing. I'm so thankful for, growing up in the sport of boxing. I met people all over the world. So it would still are friends of mine. And what I miss mostly about not being a competitor or not being in the television business when I traveled all the time, what I miss mostly is seeing the people, because you get to see the fans, in all the different arenas. And the fans are different when you're an announcer than when you're a boxer.
Yeah.
When you're a boxer, it's all immediate response. It's all you're there. They cheer as one. I mean, it's such a different feeling. But they're both good.
Yeah, and then you ended up turning pro at the age of 15. I think you only had, 15, 16, 17 amateur fights. Why'd you turn pro at such an early age?
Well, I was hoping to go. I was after the '76 Olympics. Remember, that's when we had the 8 gold medalists in the 1976 Olympics. And after those Olympics, then I had my eyes set, as many young boxers did, my eyes set on the 1980 Olympics. Now, as we look back on it, the 1980 Olympics were boycotted by Carter.
Yeah.
And my family, most of their business was in professional boxing, not in amateur boxing. Plus, I live in the Midwest, in Oklahoma. They did not have a big boxing contingent here. All my buddies played football or basketball or baseball. Nobody boxed. So because of that, and my family were professional boxing promoters, we felt the best shot for me was to turn professional. So I turned pro at 15.
Yeah,
and I remember when I fought in the Garden. When I fought in Madison Square Garden, I had to sign a release, a waiver, because I was under 18. I was 18. Because I was under 21, I had to sign a waiver stating that I wouldn't, if anything happened to me, I wouldn't sue the Garden or capitalize on it somehow. And by the way, fighting in the Garden when you're a teenager, when you're graduating high school, was the highlight of my boxing career. I fought in Madison Square Garden, and playing the Garden was just, it was. I fought the New York State champion, and he was a tough man. He was tough, just aggressive, and no quit, nonstop. And I luckily got a 10-round decision over David Vasquez.
Yeah, and the thing that really stood out to me was at the age of 15, your first year in 1975, you fought like 26 times in a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I fought twice in 1 week. Knocked the guy out in Omaha, and then I knocked the guy out in Oklahoma City.
That's pretty impressive. Most guys nowadays, even when they start off, are 3 or 4 times a year, and that's about it.
Well, that was our family's. That's the way my family made money. The only way we made money is by boxing. It just so happened that I could, with my schedule, I go to school, and I would go to the gym, and because of that, my schedule, it was more convenient. Plus, I was fighting 4-rounders, and then eventually 6-rounders that first year. But I was just, I was busy. I was going someplace. I was going somewhere. And again, it goes to the work ethic of my. It goes back to the work ethic that you talked about. Earlier.
Yeah, and in 1976, I mean, at the age of 16, you fight Danny Little Red Lopez. Great featherweight, absolutely great fighter, great guy too, by the way. You were stopped in the 4th round.
Great guy.
And your
great guy unless you're fighting him.
Yeah, that's what. I'm friends with Ruben Castillo, and Ruben's always with Danny. And I guess
Ruben's
Danny.
the best.
Danny's not doing real good now, but Ruben tried to help take care of him, and that's what he said. He said, unless you're in a ring with him,
right.
He's the greatest guy you've ever met.
And Danny's a great guy. I like hanging around with him. Even Ruben, both of those guys. See, both of those guys, I grew up most of my life in L.A. During my boxing careers, we'd go to L.A. to train for these fights. So I grew up with all these guys, Danny and Ruben and a bunch of guys. And I was thinking about it and talking to a buddy of mine about it. And my parents would check me out at school to go see some of the greatest Mexican boxers ever in the history of boxing in L.A. Lupe Pintor, saw Ruben Olivares many times, Bobby Chacon. I saw all these great Mexican fighters, and I had the opportunity to view them, watch them, and see them live, and see the adulation that those boxers got from their fans, and it was just. I'll tell you what, it was incredible. At the time, I thought I was being punished. You mentioned that earlier. I thought I was being punished for something, because I had to leave school and go out there. Now I talked to my buddies about it, and they're like, "Wow, you get to go to L.A. Wow, you get to go to the Forum. Wow, you get to go to a big boxing match." I'm like, "Well, yeah, maybe I'm looking at this incorrectly."
And then, fighting Little Red Lopez at the age of 16 when he's on the verge of getting a title shot. I know your dad said that he was wanting to alleviate the pressure of an undefeated record. Was that true? And how did fighting Lopez help your career going forward? You must have learned a lot in that fight, and even after and before that fight, just being around Lopez.
Oh, he taught me many lessons. With that one punch, he taught me many lessons. Oh, he was great, though. I'm telling you what, I hit him with everything I had, and he just kept coming. an amazing boxer, and I think that they always laid the odds for his fights were that he would get knocked down. The odds of him getting knocked down, but then getting back up and knocking out his opponent were always greater than him not getting knocked down. He just, no matter what he did, he just kept coming forward. He taught me so much because from that moment after that fight, then every other fight I went into, I would compare my opponent to Danny Little Red Lopez. And I had Danny reeling for a while. Then Danny came back. And, it's so awesome. But everybody else I compared that, and how would they do? How would that opponent do with Danny Little Red Lopez? And it gave me so much confidence going forward from that point, even though I lost that fight.
Well, was he the best fighter you ever fought? Or was there anybody you ever got in with and thought, maybe this guy's better?
Oh, he was the best fighter. The best fighter I'd fought to that point. Yes.
Yeah.
And he was a different level, and he propelled me to a different level. Then I even thought about that fight whenever I fought for the championship. When I fought for the title against my first try against Watt, and thinking how Danny would prepare for that fight. When the next fight after my fight, Danny went to Ghana and won the championship from a great fighter by the name of David Cote.
Yeah.
Cote was tough. He was strong. And I was told he went over there, and there were only 4 Marines that were there to see Danny and support Danny. Everybody else was from Ghana, and they were all for David Cote. Well, Danny won that fight in Ghana, and that even exacerbated my feelings for my abilities compared to Danny's, because I felt like I could go anywhere. Even when I went to Scotland, I was thinking about Danny. Now I had twice as many people in the audience cheering for me than Danny had, because he had 4, I had 8.
Well, before we get to the Watt fight,
for what?
The other fight I would bring up is you fought a veteran. I think it was 46 and 15, Romeo Anaya. What was it like fighting at the Olympic Auditorium?
Spectacular. Dick Engberg, the great announcer, Dick Engberg, called that fight. And the fight, this guy Anaya, was unbelievable. He had a left hook that was murderous. Oh, the worst punch I've been hit. In fact, I still have a mark on my ear that gives me trouble today. Today gives me trouble. Every time the weather changes, my ear festers up because of Romeo Anaya. And this guy had a left hook that was out of this world, and he hit me with that a lot. Well, one time he hit me right in the throat with a left hook. Now, I knocked him out. I think it was the 3rd round that I knocked him out. Whenever the fight was over, the Olympic Auditorium was built for the 1932 Olympics, and it's in downtown LA. There were like 4 fans for me there in downtown LA. Everybody else was for Anaya. Well, when I beat Anaya, Dick Engberg, the great announcer, got in the ring to interview me, and while he was interviewing me, remember I'd just gotten hit in the throat, and these fans are just boo. They whistle. They don't boo in Mexico. They whistle. They're all whistling because they didn't want me in the ring. They didn't want me. Let the guy get out of the ring. So they started booing, and Dick Engberg asked me a question, and I sounded like Darth Vader when I answered him because I got hit in the throat. I was like,
all right.
That's what I remember mostly about that fight. Also, when the interview was over, everybody's like whistling, the boos and the whistling, and I started blowing kisses out to the fans out there, and the cops all jumped in the ring, and the fans trying to get to me, and they rushed me out of the ring. All these cops were going, "You're an idiot, kid. You're stupid. Don't ever do that." But
well, that's why you got to tell them. I'm only like 18 years old.
Oh yeah, it just told me so much about how important the sport of boxing is to so many other people. It's not, it's just so important internationally, boxing is very popular, but domestically, it's just not right now. I wish it were. It's not.
Me too, because I mean, you see, and I think the death of this all started in the '80s when you lost to network boxing. I remember in 1980 watching, Hagler fight Anafermo on the same card that Leonard fought Benitez.
Yeah, sure.
That cost you $200 on pay-per-view nowadays.
Absolutely, and you never see it if it's not there. You never see it on. What they've done to the sport of boxing is HBO and Showtime are the worst things that ever happened, because they take and they bury these mega fights, the biggest and the best fights in the world. They bury them on pay-per-view. Well, first of all, you got to have cable to have pay-per-view. Then you got to have HBO to have pay-per-view, or Showtime to have pay-per-view. You can't. The amounts of these fights continue to stack up, and nobody gets to watch free boxing anymore. Nobody. One of the great things, I'm telling you, one of the greatest things about my career is it was on free national TV. I fought on CBS, I fought on ABC, I fought on NBC, and people, the masses could watch that. Now, they can't. They can't. I don't even watch boxing anymore. I don't have time. I got to get all these. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, see, I just thought of this, but in 1980, when you fought Jim Watt, I think that fight was either shown live or same-day tape delay on ABC. But I think Ollie Holmes, the replay of that, was shown after your fight.
You are so good. You are so good.
I recorded it.
That was, yeah. You are so good. You're right. You're right. That was shown, and I was on the pre-fight was Ali's last fight with Holmes.
Yeah,
that was the pre-fight, and then my fight came on at, I think, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock Eastern time, which was 2 o'clock in the morning in Glasgow, Scotland.
Yeah, and you talk about that a little bit, and I know that you got a little bit of trouble for
TV.
You posed at a Catholic Glasgow Celtic soccer club rather than the Protestant Glasgow Rangers soccer club, if I remember right, while promoting the fight. And after that, you guys were receiving death threats from a Protestant extremist group leading up to that bout?
Yes, the day of that fight. That is correct. Wow. Man, you do your homework.
Actually, I remember that from watching the fight. So,
you didn't have to do homework. Yeah, we got a death threat from some people.
Well, you can ask any teacher I ever had, Sean. I don't like to do homework, so it's got to be off my memory.
Well, that's very, very impressive. It would take a good boxing fan with a good memory to remember that stuff. So, thank you very much for that. Yeah, it was pretty scary. I was there to win the championship, and I fought with all my heart. And that fella there, James Watt, the guy that I boxed, was an interesting guy. He was so tough. I kept beating him down, but he would never acquiesce to my onslaught. So that's unfortunate. Unfortunate for me, that's the way it was. I remember in the ninth round, I rolled around and I hit him with a left hook with a Jack Dempsey roll, and I hit him with a left hook. And when I did, his eye exploded. His blood came out of his eye, and they stopped the fight. And I thought, man, I've done it. I've done it. This is it. I'm the world champion. They stopped the fight. I'm going to be champion. This is me. I'm going to be champion of the world right now. And I'm standing in the corner. I was looking up at the sky, going, I'm going to be the champion of the world. But time went on, and everybody in the audience, everybody started booing, except my mother. Everybody was booing. And I thought, there's no way this referee's going to stop that fight. And he didn't. And then Watt came and butted me in the next round. But I thought I was going to get my first championship. Oh, I didn't get it.
Yeah, and I know that I think the promoter of that fight was Mickey Duff, wasn't it? What was it like working with Mickey?
You are
Because I
correct.
know he wasn't a big fan of you and your family after that fight.
Oh, he's an interesting man, or was an interesting man, I guess I should say. He, yeah, he's quite autocratic. I think that kind of describes what the sport of boxing is. It really is an autocracy. I wish that it were different, but it's not. And he's done well. He's promoted a lot of big fights and done lots of things. Mickey Duff, but is he still promoting? Is he still around? Where is Mickey? The last I heard, Mickey Duff was resting out somewhere, but I don't know. I don't know where he is.
Thought he passed away, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't want to say I don't know. I'm not sure either.
He passed away.
Very, very powerful.
We just had a message from somebody that's listening to the interview that said he passed away March 2014.
Well, that's too bad. He was a boxer himself.
Yeah, and he promoted a lot of huge fights over in England. But, I mean, the thing is this. After that fight, I mean, you're so close to winning a title. At one point, you think you're about to win the title, and you don't. How did that affect you?
Well, I don't know. I was depressed that I didn't win it, but I was depressed. But I tell you, so many people came up and, told me differently, and they really got behind me. They really inspired me, and it helped me so much because I felt like I had done well, and I thought I'd done enough to win the fight. It made me feel better. I felt better about my abilities. And we were talking about my fight with Lopez and how important that was in my career. And I remember thinking about how somebody like Danny Lopez or Sugar Ray Robinson, whose picture I have on my wall, would handle a situation like this. And I try to just, take the high road and see if I can take a positive from that and get back to working. I learned so much, even though I lost the fight. I learned so much in that fight, and many things after that fight. There were so many things that there was so much talk about a rematch, and it never came about. And Jim Watt went on his separate way, and he had some. I think he had the next fight. I think was Arguello. He lost the title to
Arguello dominated him.
What a fantastic era of boxing, especially for the lightweight division. CBS and Terry O'Neill decided to take the lightweight division and kind of zero in on that, and it was so fortunate for me during that era because you had Art Frias, you had Boom Boom, you had
Cornelius Boza Edwards,
City, oh my gosh, all those
Bazooka Lamone,
Aaron Pryor,
Lamone was junior featherweight.
Aaron Pryor, but we had so many great boxers that you and I knew about. That you and I knew. Now, where are they? Where are they?
Yeah, I don't know if I could name a lightweight right now.
What's happened ever since about 2000, right at the year, right around the turn of the century, people started turning away from boxing, and they buried boxing on these pay-per-views or these super events that they take it away from the masses of people who want to be boxing fans. And that I guess that's what hurts. One thing I loved about my time at USA and at Fox Sports Net was that we appealed to the majority, the mass majority of fans. That we were able to bring boxing to the people who really love the sport of boxing.
Yeah, and I remember even on USA, that's where I saw fights like Leonard Camacho, Mercer, and Holmes because you guys replayed those fights on there.
Do you remember Bazooka Limon? You mentioned him earlier. Remember him pulling down the trunks of that young fighter, Sharmbe Mitchell?
Yeah.
That was on USA.
But we'll get back to the USA stuff here in a second.
So many other funny things. Oh,
we'll get there in a second.
So much fun doing that.
Don't throw me off here.
Al Albert's still one of my very best friends. Okay, back on schedule.
All right, back on schedule, and we'll get to that because I got questions about Albert and Tuesday night fights. But next up, you get to do the interview with Howard Cosell. You fight Helmer Kente. You knock Kente down in the 8th round. You achieve your dream of winning a world championship. What was that night like, and what was that night like for your entire family? Because I can tell you this, growing up with a father that was my hero, my whole goal was always to make him proud of me. And I am sure that one of the first things that go through your mind when you win that championship, when you're crowned a new champion, that your dad had to go right to the front of your mind right there.
Absolutely. My dad and my mother and the gym and the sweats, my 2 sisters who helped me. My sister Rosie used to help me so much, and my older sister Colleen, they both were there. I could hear them during the fight. And I'll tell you what, this guy Kente, what a fighter, what a heart. This guy there was no quit in him. He would never give up. And he fought back. He kept trying to win the fight, and he was just an incredible. I'm so proud that he gave me an opportunity to box him, because otherwise I'd still be out there looking. But he fought me hard. He fought me to the end of the championship, and it was just an incredible experience. Having grown up in the sport of boxing somewhat because of my parents. I know a lot of these guys, these boxers, and I kind of understand the vicissitudes of a boxer. I understand the ups and downs, and I felt sorry for Helmer Kente because he really is a nice guy. He's a solid guy and a solid professional. I was so proud of him for giving me the opportunity to win that championship. I knew that I was fulfilling my dream, but also it was so important for my family. It was so important for my whole family. And yeah, it makes me proud. I'm proud to have them, have them as a family, and they all helped me so much. Remember, I told you earlier, my parents were boxing promoters.
Yeah.
Well, they were promoted. That was our family business. So we all had to work in the business. Well, growing up, I was having all these fights. I had to call people and ask them to come to the fights, like a salesman. And that's kind of what I do now with not telling them to go to the fight, but with my real estate. I have a commercial real estate company. I sell commercial real estate. So that's what I do. A lot of the same things that I did as a enterprising boxing promoter with my parents, my family's business.
All right, now you get stripped of the title 5 months later, and if I remember the story right, you had a half brother that your dad wanted to retain your promotional ownership for your next fight, but the WBA stripped you because you refused to fight for Top Rank and Bob Arum.
Okay, yes.
Is that right? So, what happened there?
Yeah. Well, my father was taking care of all the business then. So I don't know a lot of the things that went on then, but I suspect you're accurate in what you're saying there, but I don't know that.
I think I read it in Ring Magazine, so you never know.
Well, I read it. Yeah, I read it. I wrote it down and I read it. No, yeah, I got it. Well, yeah, that's what I understand too. So,
all right. So you ended up retiring after your Johnny the Heat Verderosa fight. You want to tell the story about after that fight when you realized you need to retire?
Yeah, it just wasn't fun anymore. Boxing wasn't fun anymore, and I had other things I wanted to do. I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to it was time. My father had always, and my family, supported me through this era, and it was time to do something else.
All right, and then what got you into announcing?
Well, I started at ESPN, coincidentally, started ESPN, and I started announcing on their top-ranked boxing patches. Boxing is the first sporting event on television. At the turn of the 19th century, the 18th century, the only sports in America were baseball and boxing. And boxing was the first televised sport to ever go on TV. Boxing was the first sport to ever get a rating on cable TV. And I worked on that show with Top Ranked Boxing, Thursday night Top Ranked Boxing on ESPN. And in order to get a rating, it's my understanding you got to have at least 440,000 viewers.
Yeah.
So I was pretty proud of that, and proud of boxing at that time, because it was the first to get a rating on cable. But I was working on that show every week on ESPN, and then I worked for CBS too as a broadcaster, and then I got on with USA, and I enjoyed, the people what made it great. I mean, being able to see all these boxing fans all over the United States, or all over the world, really, was the best part of that.
Did you join Tuesday Night Fights, if I remember right, started in like 1982 or 83. When did you join that? Were you there from the beginning?
No, I think I joined about 86, maybe 85 or 86. Randy Gordon was their guy, and Randy's got a show now on
Sirius,
OnStar, or one of the.
Yeah, I think it's on Sirius. It's with Jerry Cooney, isn't it?
I think you're right.
Yeah, because we had Jerry on like June of last year. Really nice guy,
what
too.
A great guy. What a great guy. You think about this. Why is it that boxers? Yeah, I see so many of them too. That I'm thinking, this guy's a great boxer. I could knock out anybody, but he's a nice person on top of it. That's always impressed me. And
the thing that really struck me about Cooney and Holmes is, I've had both on. It's just, I mean, Larry Holmes went on for like 5 minutes talking about how good Jerry Cooney was, and people didn't realize it. Yeah. And Cooney went on for 5 minutes about how good of a guy Larry Holmes was.
That's fantastic. Isn't that great? And what a fight that was! Wow.
Yeah.
What an emotional fight that was! Wow.
Yeah, and then you got to work with Al Albert. You want to tell us about your first meeting with Al and what your relationship with Al was like?
Oh, it was great. He was like I don't know. He was always great with me. We had lots of fun on that show, and Al taught me too not to take yourself too seriously, and it just was a fun time in my life. With my love and adoration toward boxing, to be able to talk about it on television and go around the country and still have a link to it, to the sport of boxing, where I had some kind of access to it, some kind of connection with the sport of boxing, and without being a trainer or promoter or a manager, or I could do all of those things. I just don't want it. It just never has interested me. My parents, that's what they did. I said I wanted to do something else. So for me to be a broadcaster, to be able to not only broadcast all these fights, but also learn about the broadcasting, learn about about producing, directing, about I was able to produce my own vignettes for the show, and to be able to do that was pretty exciting, a whole new direction for me, and a creative side. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and my favorite shows were the ones you guys used to do from the Blue Horizon in Philadelphia.
Oh, the best. I think the Blue Horizon has been destroyed, has it not?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it has.
They've raised it. They raised it. God, what a great place, though. Man, it was a great place. The fans were extremely knowledgeable, and the fighters, everybody, in every fight in that arena was a war. Every one of them. Oh, heart. You saw everything in there. You saw skill. You saw training. You saw confidence. You saw anger, you saw love, you saw all of the emotions in every one of those boxing matches at the Blue Horizon. It was like no place else. It was like there was not another place. I wanted to sometime. You know, Detroit got such great boxing history and sports history. I wanted to somehow to bring like a boxing match, like just do Detroit and Philadelphia, just back and forth. Gosh, you know, let those guys, the guys in both of those metroplexes, because there's such a history in both. You know, both of Detroit and Philadelphia. Those are my favorite places. You know, Philadelphia is just such a great city anyway.
Yeah, and another one is you guys were the ones that really showcased George Foreman and Larry Holmes when they made their comebacks in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my question is this.
George a very good friend of mine.
Did you take the Foreman comeback seriously at first?
I did. And I think his opponents did.
Yeah, anybody can hit that hard. You have to.
Sure. Yeah, and you know, and the history was there, and he was great with us. Both of them. I mean, Larry and George. Big George has always been, you know, one of my favorites. He, like I said, my father managed him at some point in his career, and my father helped him. And then Larry has always been one of my best friends. Larry is so good to me, and I love Larry. You know, and Joe was so great to me. You know, I've been so lucky in my life to be able to know people like you know, Larry, George, and Joe, and you know, it's all very nice to me.
Yeah,
I remember when I go to these matches. Joe Frazier was champion of the world. I go to these matches and stuff, and Joe go, "Hey, come on over here, ready?" And he let me ride like in the limo with him or something, you know. And I was like, "Hey, this is pretty cool," you know. And then we go to the arena, and he introduced me around to people. I'm like, you know, you're the guy who should be getting all the attention here. You don't have to introduce me. But he was awesome. Joe Frazier and his kids too, his son, his daughter. It's a great family.
Yeah,
and Larry too. Larry's a
good guy too.
Man. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Larry's problem was Larry was basically unfiltered and told you what he thought he believed, and people that do that are usually not well received.
He speaks from the heart.
Yeah.
There's no filter on him. He speaks from the heart. Larry does. He's not afraid to tell you, you know, the truth. He's awesome.
Yeah,
and Jerry. Yeah, I mean, all these guys. Again, these are the guys I was talking about earlier. The guys that are, they're focused in the ring and they go out there try to knock you out in the ring. But in life, they're just gentle gentle giants is what they are. Gentle giants.
I'll tell you one of my favorites. You remember Yaki Lopez, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, Yaki. I interviewed him like the week before Christmas. And he calls me after the interview, and he says, "Give me your address." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Just give me your address." So I gave him my address, and then the other day, the mail comes, and there's a signed pair of boxing gloves from Yaki Lopez.
Oh, very cool. How cool is that?
And he was one of my favorite fighters
cool
also when he was younger. You know, he was a great
and
fighter.
He didn't need to do that.
I know.
He didn't need to do that. He just wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
it's very cool.
So when you look back, there was a lot of crazy times for you and Al Albert. I mean, you had Mark Gastineau getting knocked out in the fight.
Yeah, on another subject of that, I go back to what I was saying earlier in this interview. Is that I remember when I thought that I was being punished because I had to go to those fights in Vegas or in LA, and now as an old fat man, I look back on it and I was like, you know what? Maybe that was pretty cool, you know, being able to go to these fights. Maybe that was pretty cool, right? You know, and my buddies are all thinking, you got to get out of school. You know, you get to get out of school. That's great.
Yeah, and since I've been doing this, it's like a month ago, I interviewed George Foreman. And my cousin, who was like a brother, he was like my younger brother when we were growing up, he calls me and he's like, you know, I listened to your George Foreman interview. I said, what'd you think? He said, I don't know,
Oh.
because I kept sitting there thinking, my cousin's talking to George Foreman.
Yeah, that's cool. That is very cool.
But, yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's very cool.
talk to us about some of the crazier times. You had Bo
Oh.
Tillery, as you said, Mitchell and Lamone.
Oh, my gosh.
What kind
that's
of
funny.
what's your favorite memory that sticks out?
Well, again, Albert taught me not to take myself too seriously, and that helped me a lot as I was going through this stuff, and in the process of learning how to be a boxing broadcaster. And Al, showed me so many directions, so many instances, like that, where Bo and Tillery, where Bo's manager Rock Newman goes over and grabs Tillery and around the throat, tackles him, and takes him over the ropes. And it did not faze Al. He was solid, right to the core. It didn't faze him at all. It was shocking, as you would imagine, but in the Albert sense, he just made light of it. And
that's pretty damn good, Sean.
He's solid. He's a solid announcer. He and all his brothers sound the same, though. But he taught me so many things. That was one. We had another time that, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to tell you the fellow's name because I don't want to embarrass anybody here. But one fighter, we were doing a show in Lewiston, Maine, and a fighter, we're interviewing him after the fight. And all of a sudden, he puts up his finger, hold on a second, and he takes a step back. And, we're live TV, 2 million people around the country watching this show. The guy puts up his finger, hold on a second, and he goes over and Ralph's right there. And it was terrible, but that's real life. That's real life. Now, that was terrible that he did that. He was just in a 10-round, tough, hard fight. He fought his heart out, won the fight, and we interviewed him. He goes, hold on a second. He steps back, and he vomits right there. Now, that was odd and awful in a way. But what was really bad is the guys in the truck kept running it backward, and it went right back into his mouth. That was terrible. But there's so many odd, funny things like that. We had the opportunity to discover this Manomero Paez. Manomero means somersault in Spanish. Jorge Manomero Paez, and they call him somersault because he was in a circus. He grew up in a circus, his family's circus, and he wasn't really a boxer, but he was unique in that he was a clown that turned into a boxer. And he was really good and very hard to beat. But in the middle of his boxing events, he would do a flip, Manomero, right in the middle of the fight. And we saw him fight. We covered the fight when he boxed Calvin Grove for the featherweight title in Mexicali, Mexico.
That was the last 15-round title fight, wasn't it?
Wow, very impressed, Mike. Very impressed. Yes, it was the last 15-rounder, and. In the 14th round, Manomero was behind in the scorecards, but if he was able to knock down the champion 3 times, he might go ahead on the scorecards, and he did in that 15th round. Well, we were fighting a bull rink, in an outdoor bull rink, and everybody stood up, and all this dust started flying, and everybody got choked up, even me. Got choked up about trying to talk about the fight. And you can imagine how it affected the boxers. But Paez went on to win a 15-round championship fight over Calvin Grove. I look back at all these fights too. We had so many great fighters on our show. One of the reasons is because one of our producers was a guy by the name of Brad Jacobs. Brad Jacobs is now the president of Top Rank Boxing Company. So he's the president of Top Rank. The guy was incredible. He would put these matches together and make these fights, and he would give us, sometimes a fight would fall out like a week before the fight. He'd get us a better fight in a week. And what he did for our show was phenomenal, because it seems like many of these boxers mattered, many of these matches mattered, and many of the fights that went on to the Showtimes or the HBO networks came from our show.
Yeah, I think you guys had De La
It's kind of
Hoya,
like-
Mayweather, and Jones on when they
Oh,
were
yeah.
younger. And that's the first
Oh,
place
yeah.
I saw Arturo Gatti.
All of them. Yep, all of them. You're right. Every one of them. You're right. All of them. And again, I was so proud that I had the opportunity to be a part of these careers in the making, and I got to see these boxers, know these boxers, and I tell you, there's so many of them that were so great. I mean, inside, outside, and they did so many things that Monumento Paez was just unbelievable. The things that he could do.
Yeah, and the bad thing is, a lot of those guys are forgotten nowadays.
Sure.
Which hence is why we do this show.
Yeah.
I mean, a guy like Yaki Lopez.
Goes round and round.
I get Yaki Lopez to agree to doing the show. I'm telling everybody, and everybody's looking at me like I'm nuts, like, who's that? I'm like, come on. He thought Matthew Saad Mahaba in 1980 in one of the greatest fights I ever saw.
That's right.
But, so what occupies your time?
Matthew Saad Muhammad, Dwight Kawi, what a match that was. Wow. I mean, all these, you're right.
Him and Marvin Johnson.
When you look back on it. Oh, Marvin Johnson. Oh, my God. The Vampire. Johnson.
Marvin Johnson. The light heavyweight from Indianapolis. You're thinking of Vampire Johnson, the middleweight? Because I think Vampire Johnson got knocked out by Frank Fletcher.
New Jersey? Okay. Yeah. And you're talking about Marvin Johnson from
the light heavyweight. Yeah.
Okay. Too many Johnsons.
Yeah. Then you had James Scott fighting on NBC Sports from Galway.
Or too many fights. Yeah.
So
crazy. That was crazy. That was a great time for boxing.
So what occupies your time nowadays?
I am a real estate broker, and now I know why they call it broker. But I'm a real estate broker. I still use a lot of the attributes that I learned not only as a boxer but also as a broadcaster and as a young man growing up in the boxing business. Because I still do a lot of the things that our family did to promote boxing matches, and I think about that often, which helps me, I think, in my business. But I'm a real estate broker. I've helped companies find locations to make things or to do things or to sell things or to promulgate their business.
And not real big into the boxing scene nowadays?
Well, it's so hard to find boxing anymore. It's hard to find news about the boxers that, I think that's really upsets me more than anything is, where do you go to find the news about boxers that you want to know about, and where do you go to find their fights, and when are they fighting, and, what are their, all the stuff that was important to me 20 years ago when I was not only when I was a boxer, but when I was a broadcaster. And just like a lot of this stuff has been, taken away.
Yeah, in 1980, in 1980,
network TV anymore.
In 1980, I could name 30 or 40 heavyweights. I probably could name maybe 6 or 7 now.
Exactly.
And none of those 6 or 7, none of those 6 or 7 could have beat any of the 40 I named from 1979 or 80.
Sure, I can't even tell you who the heavyweight champion of the world is right now.
Neither can anybody else, because for some reason there's 4 of them. Which, I mean,
really?
That drives me nuts, because you got the WBA, the WBC, the IBO, the it's just a bunch of crap. You got 17 weight divisions now, when it was 8 at one point. You've got 4 champions. So I've never understood how you can have more than one world champion in a sport.
World champions.
Yeah, because basically you've got a bunch of organizations that want to make money off fighters, charge them stupid sanctioning fees that the fighters don't need to pay, but of course the promoters and the managers all want them to pay that so everybody can get paid. So, I mean, basically there needs to be something. Yeah, there needs to be something that overlooks boxing that has some control on it. I remember in Kentucky, you remember Greg Page? Greg Page fought in Erlanger, Kentucky. He fought Dale Crow, and Dale Crow put him in a coma. Eventually, Greg Page died. But from what I remember, that fight, there was, I think the Kentucky Commission was called the Kentucky Boxing and Wrestling Commission, which will tell you something's messed up there. And when Page got knocked out, there was no ambulance there. And they had to wait like 20 minutes to get an ambulance there to get him out of the ring.
Wow. That's sad. So my father started this WAA that I thought was a great idea, but you're right. I look at these things now as an old man, looking at things like that. Now watch the NFL. It is unbelievable what they do to protect the people in the NFL. It's fantastic. It's fabulous. The movie Concussion is remarkable because it's really true. Where are those inventions for the sport of boxing?
Yeah, but see, the problem, Sean,
they're padded with horsehair that was,
The problem is this, though, Sean. The NFL does stuff for players now, but they've still got retired players that are suffering that they don't do anything for unless they get sued for it.
Right.
And I interviewed a guy who was on the all-decade team in the 1960s for the Rams. I'm not going to bring his name up because he told me this off air, but his pension after playing 13 years in the NFL today is $1,100 a month.
Oh, it's absurd. That's absurd.
Yeah, because what you got is
absurd,
you got a with the NFL, you've got a big corporation.
Yeah, but what is the pension? Yeah,
you got a big corporation that's only worried about taking care of themselves. And the players in the NFL don't realize that someday they're going to be retired. They think they're invincible, and they never do anything to take care of what's going to happen down the line.
Right, and you could say the same thing about boxers and boxing.
Yeah.
Same thing. But the $1,100 a month to one of these boxers would mean an enormous amount of money. Yeah, you're right. It's right. It's not enough. It's not enough for the NFL. You're right. Absolutely.
And it wouldn't take much for the Don Kings.
How do you make it where it's fair?
Well, this is the thing. It wouldn't take that much for a Don, or not Don King. He's pretty much done anyways. But for HBO, Showtime, all these people to make all this money, it wouldn't take that much for them to set up a fund to take care of these fighters.
Yeah. How about some safety for these fighters? Safety, or even how about some educational programs for these fighters so that whenever they get done boxing, they would have something that, and I know things have been tried in the past, but there's just got to be a better way.
Sean, they let fighters today weigh in. They let fighters today weigh in the day before the fight, and you'll have a welterweight that weighs 147 weigh in Friday at 6 o'clock at 147. By fight night, he might weigh 170 pounds. It's not safe.
No, it's not safe. Not at all safe. And dehydration, and so many other, so many other things. So many ways that when I look at boxing now, even as a broadcaster, Al and I would talk about it. How can you improve this sport? How can you make it more fair for everyone? How can you make it more safe for everyone? How can you do that? No matter what, it's an impact sport. But what if you could maybe make the judging more fair by putting a counter in each one of the gloves? I don't know. Or you make there's got to be some improvements. When I look at the NFL, they put these helmets with the speakers and the microphone in there. They talk right directly to where are things like that for boxing? Where's the electronics in boxing? But there's nobody there looking out for the interest of the boxer. But what if you could make a boxing match and you can have access to the punch stat and or have access to replays as a judge, and or have access to maybe the judge wears silencing headphones or something. Maybe you, as a judge, and why we have 3 judges? Why not 5 judges? Why not 10 judges? Why not 100 judges? Why not 1 judge like they do in England? I mean,
if you took a judge like take a judge like Adelaide Bird, who scored Triple G Canelo 118-110. Maybe if you just didn't allow her to judge any more fights, maybe other people would fall in too. Plus, I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on with judging that, with all the money involved, makes it hard to, oversee.
Oh, that's too bad. That's too bad.
They need to do something about it, because it's the only sporting event that you can watch, be 100% sure who the winner is, but yet you still have to wait to see. I would almost rather see it be the way it used to be back in the old days, where the judge is the referee. He's the guy standing right there in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember, just walk over, hold your hand up, you know who won the fight.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be there's got to be a better way. There's just got to be a better way. Even today, looking at boxing, it looks like boxing from the years gone by. It looks like boxing from the 1950s, the 1960s. They're always the same. Aren't there better? Where's the improvement? Where's the better trunks? Where's the better gloves? Where's the improvements here? But there's so many things that could be improved, but it's just one of those things.
All right, Sean, I know I've kept you here for over an hour, so I don't want to keep you any longer. I know you're probably busy, but I really want to thank you for coming on the show today. It was an absolute honor to have you on.
Well, Mike, thank you for having me on. I do appreciate it. I appreciate your knowledge about boxing and your knowledge of my career and about the other people that are boxing and people that love the sport of boxing. I can tell in your voice you love it, and I wish it was a different time, a different era for boxing, but it's not.
Yeah, I know, but that's why most of my shows I do with guys that are old like us. Because I remember getting all excited every week, getting a TV guide just to see who was fighting the next weekend on NBC Sports World or Wide World of Sports, and now it's just HBO or Showtime once a month.
Yeah, sure.
But
I know. I get it too.
All right, Sean. Well, hey, we'd love to have you back on sometime if you want to come on and talk to us. It was great having you on the show.
Cool. Mike, thank you so very much for this. I really appreciate the time, and I got to get back to work. Thanks,
well, you own the business, right?
Yes, I'm the boss.
Oh, you'll be all right then. But
all right. Hey, Mike, great talking to you. Thank you again for your time.
All right, thanks, Sean.
Go boxing. Bye-bye.
All right, guys, I want to remind you that Thursday night you'll be able to hear the NFL Pick'em Show with myself, former Denver Bronco Mark Cooper, Matt and Brian as always, plus a new guest, former Carolina Panther quarterback Tony Pike, also led the University of Cincinnati to an undefeated season in 2009 and then the Sugar Bowl. You can catch all of our shows on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn. Go to thegruelingtruth.net to catch out all of our sports coverage, boxing, football, baseball, basketball. So, for Sean O'Grady, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.